The air on Xeris tasted like metal and ozone. Lieutenant Kaiden Voros adjusted his breathing apparatus as he swept his gaze across the shimmering landscape of crystal formations that stretched toward 3 pale moons. 6 months stationed on this alien world, and he still couldn't get used to how the light fractured through everything, casting prismatic shadows that played tricks on his eyes. "Perimeter scan complete, sir," came Talia's voice through his comm unit. "All sectors clear." Kaiden acknowledged with a tap to his wrist panel. The mining outpost had been quiet for weeks, too quiet for his liking. After 15 years in the Galactic Coalition forces, he developed an instinct for trouble. Something about the silence felt wrong. "Keep the patrols doubled," he ordered. "And tell Brenner to get those sensor arrays recalibrated. I want to know if anything larger than a dust particle approaches this compound." The crystalline structures surrounding the outpost had been interfering with their equipment since arrival. Coalition Command insisted this remote planet was strategically vital. Its unique crystal formations contained energy properties that could revolutionize propulsion technology. What Command hadn't mentioned was that the Draxan Imperium thought the same thing. Kaiden was halfway back to the command center when the first explosion hit. The ground beneath him buckled. Crystal shards erupted skyward, catching sunlight in a deadly beautiful display before raining down around him. His training kicked in instantly. He dropped, rolled, and activated his shield generator in one fluid motion. "Contact northern perimeter," he shouted into his comm. "All units battle stations." Through the chaos came the distinctive whine of Draxan pulse weapons. The air filled with brilliant blue streaks of energy as his team returned fire. Kaiden drew his sidearm and sprinted toward the nearest defensive position, dodging crystal shrapnel with each step. "How many?" he demanded, sliding into cover beside Corporal Jax. "Initial count shows at least 50 fighters," Jax replied, his dark features tense with concentration as he fired another burst. "They came out of nowhere, sir. No warning on the sensors at all." "They've been planning this," Kaiden muttered. "Coordination, people. Teams Alpha and Charlie, convergence pattern, Delta hold the command center at all costs." The battle intensified. Coalition forces held their positions, but the Draxan kept coming in waves. Their attack pattern seemed designed to herd the defenders toward the central compound, unusual tactics that set off warning bells in Kaiden's mind. During a brief lull, he used the opportunity to retreat to a higher vantage point. From there, he saw what the Draxan were really after. They weren't focusing on the main crystal deposits or even the research facilities. They were systematically destroying the eastern section of the settlement, the civilian quarter. "They're targeting non-combatants," he hissed, then switched to the command channel. "All available units to the eastern quarter, civilian evacuation priority Alpha." Breaking from cover, Kaiden sprinted across open ground, plasma fire sizzling past him. The civilian structures were already half collapsed, their crystalline architecture shattered and burning. He pushed through smoke and debris, scanning for survivors. "Hello, Coalition forces," he called out. "Anyone here?" A faint sound caught his attention, not quite a voice, more like a whisper of movement. Kaiden followed it to a partially collapsed dwelling. Beneath a fallen support beam, almost invisible in the refracting light, he spotted a small figure huddled in terror. Not human, one of the indigenous Xerians. A child from the looks of it with skin that shimmered like the surrounding crystals. Large, multifaceted eyes gazed up at him, filled with fear and wonder. "It's okay," Kaiden said softly, holstering his weapon and approaching slowly. "I won't hurt you." The child, a girl he realized, remained frozen. Her translucent skin pulsed with faint bioluminescence, a trait he'd observed in the local population. Unlike the adults with their elongated limbs, she seemed small and fragile, no more than the equivalent of an 8-year-old human child. "Come on," he urged, extending his hand. "It's not safe here." A sudden crash nearby decided for them. The girl darted forward, grasping his outstretched fingers. Her touch sent an unexpected tingling sensation up his arm. "I've got you," Kaiden assured her, leading her toward the exit. "Stay close." They had barely cleared the dwelling when a squad of Draxan soldiers appeared at the end of the street. Their sleek, insectoid armor gleamed menacingly as they raised their weapons. "Run," Kaiden shouted, pushing the girl behind him and drawing his blaster. The first volley of shots came faster than he anticipated. He managed to deflect two with his portable shield, but the third caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. Pain lanced through him, but he kept his footing. The girl stood frozen in terror, directly in the line of fire. Without hesitation, Kaiden threw himself in front of her as three more blasts came. They hit him squarely in the chest and abdomen. His armor absorbed some of the impact, but he felt the searing heat penetrate deeply. He crumpled to his knees, vision blurring. The girl's face swam before him, her crystalline features contorted in distress. Kaiden tried to speak, to tell her to run, but blood filled his mouth instead. The last thing he saw before consciousness fled was her small hands reaching toward his wounds, her fingertips beginning to glow with an intense blue-white light that seemed to come from within her very being. A light that, impossibly, reached toward him, seeking the places where his life was seeping away. Through the haze of pain, one final thought surfaced. She wasn't just any Zarian child, and whatever she was doing might change everything. Then darkness claimed him completely. Consciousness returned to Kaiden in waves, each bringing with it strange sensations. A tingling warmth flowing through his chest, the scent of unfamiliar herbs and soft chimes that seemed to resonate within his bones. He opened his eyes to find himself in a chamber whose walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Crystal formations jutted from the ceiling, casting prismatic light across the stone floor. "You have awakened," came a melodic voice. The alien girl stood beside his resting place, her iridescent skin glowing softly in the dim light. Up close, Kaiden could see intricate patterns swirling beneath her translucent epidermis, constellations of light that shifted with her movements. "Where am I?" Kaiden attempted to sit up, expecting pain. To his astonishment, he felt only a residual stiffness where the laser blasts had struck him. He looked down at his chest. The wounds that should have killed him were now pale silver scars. "Beneath the crystal spires," she answered, gesturing to the surrounding chamber. "This sanctuary has sheltered my people for generations." "You saved me," Kaiden said, memories of the battle flooding back. "How?" The girl, no longer appearing quite so childlike as she moved with measured grace, approached and sat beside him. "My name is Iliara. I am Lumiri, the last daughter of the royal bloodline of Xeris." Lumiri? Kaiden had never heard the term during his mission briefings. "We were once the guardians of this world," Iliara explained, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the chamber's lights. "The crystals you seek for weapons and ships, Lieutenant Voros, are merely echoes of what once flowed through the veins of my ancestors." Kaiden stared at her in astonishment. "How do you know my name?" A smile touched her luminous features. "While healing your wounds, our energies became temporarily aligned. I glimpsed fragments of your memories, just as you may have glimpsed mine." Images flashed through Kaiden's mind. A grand crystal city, ceremonies beneath triple moons, then fire, screams, and systematic extermination. "The Draxen have been hunting your people," he realized. "Not for territory or resources, but for extinction." Iliara nodded solemnly. "They fear what they cannot control. An ancient prophecy speaks of Lumiri blood awakening forces that could challenge even the mightiest empires. My ancestors once channeled the planet's energy through their bodies, healing, creating, sometimes even destroying. Such power has been lost for generations, until now." She extended her hand, and a small orb of pulsating energy formed above her palm. "When I saw you fall protecting me, something awakened inside. The dormant abilities of my bloodline responded to your sacrifice." Kaiden reached toward the orb, feeling its warmth without touching it. "So the Draxen attack was meant to eliminate any remaining Lumiri," she confirmed. "They've hunted us for decades, but their sensors recently detected energy signatures matching royal bloodline patterns. They came for me, Lieutenant Voros." A distant explosion shook the chamber, sending crystal dust raining from the ceiling. Iliara's expression tightened. "They're getting closer." As if summoned by her words, an elderly Zarian rushed into the chamber, his crystalline skin duller than Iliara's but etched with complex patterns. "Princess, they've breached the upper tunnels. We must move deeper." Iliara rose with fluid grace. "This is Thorian, my guardian since my parents were killed." She turned to the elder. "Thorian, Lieutenant Voros has proven himself an ally." The elder regarded Kaiden with skepticism but nodded curtly. "Then he must come with us. The sanctuary is compromised." Kaiden stood, surprised by his own strength. Whatever healing Iliara had performed went beyond merely closing wounds. He felt energized, heightened somehow. My team. Most retreated to the secondary outpost, Thorian informed him. The Draxan allowed them to escape while focusing their search on this region. Another explosion, closer this time, emphasized the urgency of their situation. Thorian pressed his palm against a crystalline formation on the wall, which responded by sliding open to reveal a narrow passageway. This tunnel leads to the ancient temple, he explained. It may be our last sanctuary. As they hurried through the passage, Kaiden noticed the walls were covered with intricate engravings depicting Zarian history. One panel showed figures channeling energy streams between planets. Your people traveled between worlds? He asked Iliara, who moved beside him. Before the decline, yes, Zaris was once the center of a peaceful coalition spanning 7 systems. Her voice carried a hint of pride mingled with sadness. The human delegation was to be welcomed next, but the Draxan Wars began instead. The passage opened into a vast underground cavern, its ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. At its center stood a massive crystal formation shaped like a tree, its branches spanning outward in crystalline splendor. The heart of Zaris, Iliara whispered reverently, the source from which all life on this planet springs. Kaiden had barely taken in the magnificent sight when laser fire erupted behind them. A squadron of Draxan soldiers had discovered the passage. Run, Thorian shouted, shoving Iliara toward the crystal tree. Kaiden drew his sidearm, returning fire to cover their retreat. As a blast struck near Iliara, her fear triggered something unexpected. A pulse of energy erupted from her hands, creating a translucent shield that deflected the incoming fire. Her eyes widened in surprise. I've never been able to. Later, Kaiden grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the crystal tree as Thorian fell back to engage the Draxan. They reached the base of the crystal formation as Thorian cried out, struck by enemy fire. Iliara screamed, her distress sending another wave of energy outward, this time stronger, more focused. The surge connected with the crystal tree, which suddenly blazed with brilliant light. Energy cascaded through its branches, creating a blinding flash that momentarily disoriented everyone in the cavern. When the light subsided, a section of wall behind the tree had disappeared, revealing another hidden passage. Thorian taught me of this exit, Iliara said, tears streaming down her face as she saw her guardian's fallen form. He said to use it only in greatest need. Kaiden glanced back at the advancing Draxan forces, then at the grieving princess. With gentle urgency, he guided her toward the passage. He gave his life to protect you just as your parents did. Don't let his sacrifice be in vain. As they slipped into the narrow tunnel, Iliara placed her hand on the wall. It sealed behind them, blocking pursuit. In the sudden darkness, her skin provided the only light, its luminescence reflecting her emotional turmoil. I am truly the last now, she whispered, her voice breaking. Kaiden took her hand, surprised when a spark of energy passed between them at the contact. Not alone, though, he promised. Whatever comes next, we face it together. The tunnel stretched before them, leading deeper into the heart of Zaris, and toward whatever destiny awaited them both. The crystal forest stretched endlessly around them, towering formations creating a labyrinth of light and shadow. 3 days had passed since their escape from the sanctuary, and Kaiden was still adjusting to the strange reality he now inhabited, a reality where the alien girl he'd protected was actually a princess with dormant powers that challenged everything he understood about Zaris. They had established a temporary camp in a hollow crystal formation, large enough to shelter them yet small enough to remain hidden from Draxan scanners. Iliara sat cross-legged at the center, eyes closed in concentration as tendrils of energy danced between her fingertips. The connection grows stronger each day, she observed, opening her eyes to find Kaiden watching her. Though I still cannot fully control it. Kaiden approached, sitting beside her. On Earth, we have stories about people who suddenly discover abilities they never knew they possessed, usually after some life-changing event. Like saving a foolish soldier who throws himself in front of laser fire. A smile touched her luminous features. I prefer heroic to foolish, he countered with a grin. Their easy banter had developed gradually as they traveled together. Initially, Iliara had maintained the formal reserve typical of her royal upbringing. but isolation and shared danger had worn away those barriers. "Show me again what happened when you tried to move the water," Kaiden suggested, gesturing to their small collection of supplies. Iliara extended her hand toward a container of water. Her brow furrowed in concentration as a faint glow emanated from her fingertips. The water's surface trembled, then rose in a wobbly column before splashing back down. "Progress," Kaiden encouraged. "Yesterday you barely created ripples." "It's not enough," frustration colored her voice. The ancient Lumiri could command the fundamental elements of creation. They shaped mountains, redirected rivers, healed entire populations with a thought. Kaiden considered her words. "Perhaps you're approaching it wrong. You keep trying to force the power outward to impose your will on things. How else would one command the elements?" "Not command, connect." Kaiden moved behind her, gently placing his hands on her shoulders. "On my world, some philosophies teach that everything is interconnected. Don't reach for power, recognize that it's already there, flowing through everything." Iliara stiffened at his touch, then gradually relaxed. "Show me." "Close your eyes," he instructed, his voice dropping lower. "Feel the boundaries between yourself and the water dissolving. You're not separate entities, you're expressions of the same fundamental energy." As he spoke, Kaiden felt an unexpected warmth spreading from his palms where they contacted her iridescent skin. Iliara gasped softly, her body illuminating with increased bioluminescence that traveled up to meet his touch, creating circuits of light where their bodies connected. "Kaiden," she whispered, "something is happening." The water before them began to rise, not in a wobbly column, but in an elegant spiral that twisted upward with perfect control. Around them, the crystal walls of their shelter resonated, creating harmonics that vibrated through their bodies. "How are you doing this?" he asked, amazed. "It's not me alone," she answered, her voice filled with wonder. "It's us. Somehow your physiological makeup acts as a catalyst for my abilities." The realization struck them simultaneously. This was why the Draxan feared the prophecy. Not because the Lumiri themselves would rise again, but because their powers could be amplified through connection with humans, creating something entirely new. The spiral of water collapsed as Iliara turned to face Kaiden, their faces now inches apart. The circuitry of light continued to flow between them, creating patterns where their skin connected. "The prophecy never spoke of Lumiri restoration," she said softly. "It spoke of transformation through union with another world." Something shifted in their dynamic, the air between them charged with more than just energy. Kaiden found himself drawn to her alien beauty, to the intelligence and strength behind her multifaceted eyes. "Iliara," he began, uncertain how to navigate this uncharted territory. She silenced him by pressing a finger to his lips, sending a pleasant shock through his nervous system. "My people express deepest connections differently than yours," she murmured. "We share energy, memories, sensations." Her hand moved to his cheek, and suddenly Kaiden found himself experiencing fragments of her life. Childhood moments in crystal spires, the weight of royal expectation, grief at her parents' murder, and now, unmistakably, growing affection for him. Acting on instinct, he placed his hand over hers, focusing his thoughts on reciprocating, showing her his own past, his hopes, and his growing feelings that transcended duty or protection. Their energies intertwined as their foreheads touched, creating a feedback loop of emotion and memory. In that suspended moment, the distinction between human and Zarian blurred, revealing something more fundamental, two beings recognizing themselves in each other. The intimate connection broke as an alarm chimed on Kaiden's wrist device. They pulled apart, both breathless from the intensity of their exchange. "Draxan Patrol," he said, checking the scanner. 5 soldiers approaching from the north." Reality crashed back upon them. Iliara rose gracefully, her expression shifting from vulnerable to resolute. "We cannot remain hidden forever." "No," Kaiden agreed, gathering their essential supplies. "But we're not ready to face their full force either." "Then perhaps," she suggested, a new confidence in her voice, "it's time to test our combined abilities against a smaller threat." They moved to the edge of their crystal shelter, observing the approaching Draxan patrol. Their insectoid armor gleamed as they methodically swept the forest, energy weapons primed. "Remember what we just discovered," Kaiden said quietly, taking her hand. "Don't force it, let it flow between us." Iliara nodded, closing her eyes briefly to center herself. When she opened them, determination shone in their faceted depths. Together, then. As the Draxan squad entered a clearing, Iliara extended her free hand. Kaiden placed his palm against her back, completing the circuit between them. Immediately, the now familiar warmth surged through his body, amplifying as it reached her outstretched fingers. A pulse of energy, far stronger than anything Iliara had produced alone, erupted from her hand. It struck the crystal formations surrounding the Draxan soldiers, causing them to resonate at increasing frequencies until they shattered, raining prismatic shards upon the startled patrol. "Move," Kaiden urged, pulling Iliara through the forest while the Draxan were disoriented. They ran hand in hand, their connected energy allowing them to navigate the crystal maze with unprecedented speed and agility. Behind them, recovery shouts and the whine of charging weapons spurred them onward. There, Iliara pointed toward a massive crystalline structure in the distance. The resonance spire, it connects to pathways beneath the surface. As they sprinted across the final stretch of exposed ground, a laser blast struck near their feet. Kaiden pulled Iliara behind him protectively, but she moved beside him instead. "Not this time," she said firmly. "We face them together." They turned as one, hands clasped, and the energy that flowed between them manifested as a shield that deflected the next volley of shots. With their free hands extended in unison, they directed a focused surge that uprooted crystal formations between them and their pursuers, creating a barrier. The Draxan commander's voice carried across the distance. "The prophecy manifests. All units converge on my position." "We've confirmed their fears," Kaiden realized. "The hunt will intensify now." Iliara's expression remained determined as she tugged him toward the resonance spire. "Then we must find others who will stand with us. There's a resistance camp in the Whispering Canyons, survivors from both our peoples who have fought the Draxan for years." As they reached the spire, Iliara placed their joined hands against its surface. The crystal responded immediately, creating an opening that led downward into darkness. Before entering, Kaiden paused, looking into her eyes. "Everything changes from here." "It already has," she replied softly, the light beneath her skin pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. "But perhaps that's what was always meant to be." Their journey had transformed from escape to purpose, their relationship from protector and protected to something far more profound, a connection that might reshape the destiny of two worlds. The resistance camp sprawled through the Whispering Canyons, a network of interconnected caves and ravines where crystalline formations merged with traditional structures. Human and Zarian refugees moved together in unlikely harmony, united by their opposition to Draxan rule. Commander Vex, a scarred Zarian veteran whose crystalline skin had dulled to a matte gray, regarded Kaiden and Iliara with open skepticism. His council, 3 humans and 2 Zarians, shared his wary expression. "A Lumiri princess and a coalition lieutenant," Vex said, his melodic voice roughened by years of combat. "Claiming to manifest powers from ancient prophecies. Forgive my caution, but such tales sound conveniently heroic." Arian Frost, the Resistance's human leader, studied them with calculating eyes. Her combat armor bore coalition insignias, though worn and modified. "The Draxan activity in the Crystal Forest sector has increased tenfold in the past week. Something has certainly rattled them." "We can demonstrate," Kaiden offered, stepping forward. Iliara placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Our connection is still unpredictable. We risk damaging your sanctuary." "Or revealing it to Draxan sensors," added Thoris, the Resistance's technology specialist. The young Zarian's skin patterns marked him as a scholar caste, his luminescence concentrated in his elongated fingers. Any significant energy discharge would be detected within minutes. Commander Vex leaned forward. "Yet you expect us to believe you found the key to turning this war, a war we've been losing for a decade." "We don't claim to have all the answers," Kaiden responded. "But what's happening between us?" He glanced at Iliara. "It's real, and it's growing stronger." "Show us something small, then," Arian suggested. "Something controlled." Iliara considered, then nodded. She and Kaiden moved to stand beside each other, their shoulders touching. The simple contact immediately created visible circuits of light where their bodies connected. With delicate precision, Iliara extended her hand toward a pitcher of water on the council table. Rather than moving the liquid, She focused on its temperature, drawing heat energy from it molecule by molecule. Frost crystallized along the pitcher's surface as the water inside froze solid. Murmurs rippled through the council as Iliara then reversed the process, her fingers glowing brighter as she precisely melted the ice back to water without spilling a drop. Impressive, Thoris admitted, but hardly enough to challenge Draxan battlecruisers. It's not about raw power, Kaiden explained. It's about what this represents. For generations, the Lumiri abilities have been dormant and humans have been viewed as invaders on this world. What if both assumptions were wrong? What if we were always meant to find each other? Poetic, Commander Vex observed dryly, but war isn't won with poetry. No, Iliara agreed, her voice gaining strength. It's won with hope, with unexpected advantages, and with allies. The Draxan fear our combined potential enough to commit genocide. Shouldn't that tell you something? A tense silence followed her words until Arian rose from her seat. We'll give you 2 weeks. Train, develop whatever this is. If you can prove its tactical value by then, we'll integrate you into our operations. Over the following days, Kaiden and Iliara trained relentlessly, exploring the boundaries of their unusual connection. Under Thoris's guidance, they practiced in a shielded chamber where their energy signatures couldn't be detected by Draxan sensors. Each session brought new discoveries. Their combined abilities grew exponentially with sustained contact, allowing manipulations of energy that neither could achieve alone. More intriguing was how quickly they began anticipating each other's movements and thoughts, developing a synchronicity that transcended verbal communication. The Resistance fighters watched their progress with growing interest. What had begun as curiosity evolved into cautious optimism, as Kaiden and Iliara demonstrated increasingly precise control over crystal resonance, thermal energy, and even gravitational fields on a small scale. In their private moments, the connection between them deepened beyond the physical. Their nightly ritual of energy sharing, hands clasped, foreheads touching, memories and emotions flowing freely between them, became a sanctuary amid the preparations for war. I never imagined this, Iliara confessed one night as they sat on an outcropping overlooking the canyon. The triple moons of Xeris cast prismatic light through crystal formations, creating dancing rainbows across her iridescent skin. When my parents spoke of my destiny, it was always about preservation, about surviving until the Lumiri could rise again. Kaiden traced the luminescent patterns on her arm, sending pleasant shivers through her nervous system. And now I wonder if preservation was too limited a vision. She turned to face him, multifaceted eyes reflecting moonlight. Perhaps transformation is the true path forward, not just for me, but for both our peoples. The intimacy between them had grown into something neither had words to fully define, part emotional bond, part energy symbiosis, part physical attraction that transcended species differences. When they kissed, it created cascades of light beneath Iliara's skin and sent waves of euphoric energy through Kaiden's body. Their training sessions intensified as the deadline approached. The Resistance leaders requested increasingly complex demonstrations, defensive shields, targeted energy projections, crystal manipulation at distance. Each success built confidence among the fighters, many of whom began treating the prophecy as real rather than mythical. On the final day of their probation, Commander Vex called them to the war chamber, where a holographic display showed Draxan troop movements. They're massing for an assault, he informed them grimly. 3 battalions, heavy artillery, air support. Our intelligence suggests they plan to eliminate the Resistance once and for all. Arian studied the tactical display. They've never committed resources like this before. Something's changed in their strategic calculus. Kaiden realized. They're accelerating their timeline because of what Iliara and I represent. Commander Vex fixed them with a piercing stare. Then it appears your trial by fire comes sooner than anticipated. The question remains, are you ready? Before either could answer, alarm sirens blared throughout the compound. Thoris burst into the chamber, his crystalline features taut with urgency. Draxan advance units have bypassed our outer sensors, he reported. They'll reach the upper canyons within the hour. Chaos erupted as Resistance fighters mobilized, gathering weapons and moving to defensive positions. Amid the activity, Kaiden pulled Iliara aside. This is happening too fast, he said quietly. We've made progress but facing a full assault. "We don't have a choice," she interrupted, her expression resolute. "This moment was always coming, Kaiden. Whether today or next month changes nothing." He studied her face, marveling at how the frightened girl he'd protected had transformed into this confident leader. "Then we face it together." They joined the defensive line at the canyon's narrowest approach, a natural bottleneck where the resistance hoped to contain the Draxan advance. Fighters positioned themselves on ridges and behind barricades, weapons primed. The air hummed with nervous energy. Kaiden and Eliara took position at the center, hands clasped as they established their energy connection. As their bond solidified, they became aware of something unexpected, faint resonances from the Zarians nearby, as if their combined energy was awakening dormant patterns in others. "Do you feel that?" Eliara whispered. "Like echoes," Kaiden confirmed. "Your people are responding to our energy." Before they could explore this discovery, the first Draxan shock troops appeared at the canyon entrance. Their insectoid armor gleamed menacingly as they advanced in perfect formation, energy weapons charged. "Hold positions," Commander Vex ordered through the comm system. "Wait for my signal." The resistance fighters tensed as the Draxan drew closer. At 50 meters, Vex gave the command, "Fire." Energy weapons and projectiles erupted from the resistance positions, striking the front line of Draxan troops. The battle had begun. Initial exchanges seemed to favor the resistance as their superior positions allowed concentrated fire. But as more Draxan forces poured into the canyon, including heavy artillery platforms, the balance shifted quickly. A massive energy blast from a Draxan cannon struck a ridge above, sending crystalline debris raining down on resistance fighters. Another blast breached a barricade, allowing enemy troops to push forward. "We're losing the perimeter," someone shouted as fighters began falling back from exposed positions. Kaiden looked at Eliara, their hands still joined. "Now or never." She nodded, determination in her eyes. Together, they stepped forward, drawing energy from each other in a continuous loop that manifested as visible light surrounding their bodies. "Focus on the artillery first," Kaiden suggested. "We need to even the odds." In perfect synchronicity, they extended their free hands toward the advancing Draxan forces. The energy between them surged outward in a concentrated beam that struck the lead artillery platform. Instead of exploding, the platform's systems simply shut down, its energy absorbed and redirected. Encouraged, they swept their focus across the Draxan front line. Wherever their combined energy touched, weapons malfunctioned and armor systems failed. The Draxan advance faltered as confusion spread through their ranks. "It's working," Arian exclaimed, rallying nearby fighters. "Press the advantage." What happened next exceeded everyone's expectations. As Kaiden and Eliara's energy field expanded, it created resonant patterns that connected with the Zarians in the resistance. One by one, their bioluminescence intensified, ancestral abilities flickering to life after generations of dormancy. A medical officer discovered she could accelerate healing by touching wounded fighters. A scout found he could blend perfectly with crystalline surroundings, becoming nearly invisible. Others manifested abilities suited to their lineage and training, small powers individually, but collectively transformative. The Draxan commander, recognizing the shift in battle conditions, ordered an all-out assault. Troops surged forward en masse, trying to overwhelm the resistance through sheer numbers. In response, Kaiden and Eliara poured everything into a massive shield that spanned the canyon entrance. The strain was enormous, sweat beading on Kaiden's forehead as Eliara's skin blazed with light. Behind them, reinvigorated resistance fighters rallied, their combined abilities creating unexpected advantages across the battlefield. For nearly an hour, the shield held against increasingly desperate Draxan attacks. When it finally began to flicker, the resistance was fully prepared. They counterattacked with coordinated precision, driving the Draxan back through the canyon entrance. As the enemy forces retreated, a cheer rose from the resistance fighters. The impossible had happened. They had repelled a full-scale Draxan assault. Exhausted, Kaiden and Eliara sank to their knees, still connected through their clasped hands. Around them, Zarians marveled at their reawakened abilities, while humans realized they were witnessing the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy. Commander Vex approached, his scarred face softened with something approaching awe. It seems I owe you an apology, and perhaps more importantly, my allegiance. The prophecy wasn't about a savior, Iliara explained, her voice weary but triumphant. It was about a catalyst, a union that would reawaken what was lost. And change everything, Kaiden added, looking at the humans and Zarians working side by side in the aftermath of battle. For both our worlds. As the triple moons of Xeris rose higher, illuminating the battlefield where the tide of war had finally turned, Kaiden and Iliara's joined hands glowed with promise, not just for victory, but for a future neither of their peoples had dared to imagine. Dawn broke over the crystal plains, casting rainbow light across the assembled forces of the united resistance. 3 weeks had passed since the battle at Whispering Canyons, 3 weeks of preparation, training, and hope spreading like wildfire through refugee camps and hidden settlements across Xeris. What had begun as a desperate defensive action had transformed into a movement. Zarians whose abilities had lain dormant for generations discovered their heritage through contact with the energy field Kaiden and Iliara generated. Humans who had once viewed the planet as merely a strategic resource now fought alongside its indigenous people, creating battle tactics that utilized both technologies and awakened Lumiri abilities. Kaiden stood atop a crystalline ridge, surveying the gathered forces. Beside him, Iliara's luminescence pulsed with steady confidence, so different from the frightened girl he'd shielded on that fateful day. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, taking her hand. Their energy connection had become so natural that they barely noticed the circuitry of light that formed between them now. "We've come too far for doubt," she replied, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the sunrise. "The Draxan headquarters is the last stronghold. Once it falls, Xeris will be free." Commander Vex approached, accompanied by Arian Frost and the Resistance Leadership Council. The scarred Zarian veteran had become their most vocal supporter after witnessing the battle's outcome. Final reports confirm the Draxan have consolidated their remaining forces at the central compound, he informed them. Approximately 2,000 troops, defensive shields, and orbital support capabilities. Arian unfolded a holographic map showing the target, a massive fortress built into a mountainside, surrounded by crystalline formations that had been weaponized to create defensive barriers. "The assault will proceed in 3 waves, she explained. "First, our stealth teams will disable their sensor arrays. Then our artillery will target their shield generators. Finally, the main force will breach the compound itself." Kaiden studied the plan, noting the strategic placement of awakened Zarians whose abilities would be crucial to each phase. "And our role. You and the princess are our ultimate contingency," Commander Vex stated. "Your energy field not only enhances Lumiri abilities but disrupts Draxan technology. We'll need that advantage when we reach their command center." The plan was sound, but everyone understood the stakes. This would be the Resistance's only chance to end Draxan occupation. Failure would mean annihilation. As the council dispersed to prepare their teams, Iliara drew Kaiden away from the others. Her expression held a vulnerability she rarely showed in public. "Before we go into battle," she said softly, "there's something I must share with you." She led him to a secluded alcove where crystal formations created natural privacy. There, she placed both hands on his chest, initiating their deepest form of connection, the sharing of energy, memory, and emotion. What flowed between them this time was different, not past experiences but potential futures. Visions of Xeris restored, of humans and Zarians building communities together, of children with both human features and luminescent skin. "This is what I see when our energies align completely," she whispered. "Not just victory today, but possibility tomorrow." Kaiden was overwhelmed by the intimacy of her vision, their vision. He drew her closer, their foreheads touching, allowing his own hopes to flow into the connection. His vision complemented hers, diplomatic relations established between Earth and Xeris, cultural exchanges, technological advancement that benefited both worlds. "Is it real," he asked, "or just what we wish could be?" "The ancient texts say Lumiri visions are echoes of probabilities," she explained. "Not certainties, but paths that can be walked if we choose them." Their shared moment of vulnerability was interrupted by the call to assemble. The final battle awaited. The assault began at midday. Stealth teams, humans using adaptive camouflage technology paired with Zarians who could manipulate light around themselves. infiltrated the perimeter. Within an hour, they had disabled the primary sensor grid, creating blind spots in Draxan defenses. Artillery teams positioned in the surrounding ridges targeted shield generators with precision strikes. Zarians with newly awakened abilities to focus energy through crystal formations amplified the weapon's effectiveness, penetrating defenses that would have withstood conventional attacks. When the shields fell, the main assault force advanced. The battle was fierce. Draxan troops fought with the desperation of those who knew defeat meant extinction of their presence on this world. Resistance fighters pushed forward through corridors and chambers, securing ground meter by bloody meter. Kaiden and Eliara moved with an elite strike team toward the command center. Their combined energy field disrupted Draxan weapons and communications, creating openings for their allies to exploit. Yet as they penetrated deeper into the fortress, resistance stiffened. "They're falling back to the central chamber," Arian reported over comms as they regrouped in a captured section. "Intelligence suggests their commander has activated some kind of failsafe protocol." "What kind of failsafe?" Kaiden asked, checking his weapon. Commander Vex's expression darkened. "Our sources indicate they've rigged the planetary crystal matrix with destabilizers. If they can't control Xeris, they intend to render it uninhabitable for all." Eliara gasped. "The matrix extends throughout the planet's crust. Destabilizing it would trigger catastrophic reactions, earthquakes, eruptions, poisonous gas releases." "Then we have no choice," Kaiden concluded. "We need to reach that command center before they can activate it." The final push was the most challenging. Draxan elite guards formed a nearly impenetrable barrier before the command center. Despite combined human and Zarian tactics, the resistance advance stalled. "We need a breakthrough," Arian urged, taking cover as energy blasts superheated the air around them. Eliara turned to Kaiden, her luminescence pulsing with determination. "I think I know a way, but it's risky. We would need to channel more energy than we ever have before." "What's the risk?" he asked, already knowing he would agree regardless. "Total synchronization," she explained. "Our energies wouldn't just connect, they would temporarily merge. I've only read about such bonds in ancient texts. The strain could be significant." Kaiden didn't hesitate. "If it gives us a chance to stop that failsafe, I'm willing." They positioned themselves at the center of the resistance line. Around them, fighters provided covering fire as they began the process. This time, rather than simply joining hands, they embraced fully, maximizing physical contact.